Start? Okay. Hello, everyone, and a very happy new year to you. Hope 2022 is healthy, happy, and safe for you and your families. By way of introduction, I am Jyoti Mathur Philip, the Director for the Implementation Support Division at the Secretariat on the Convention on Biological Diversity. I'm also the Secretary for the Subsidiary Body on Implementation, and I'm supporting Charlotta in that. I will let everyone else introduce themselves and go ahead with the webinar. So I would like to welcome you on behalf of the CBD Secretariat to this first webinar of the year. I would like to thank all of you for joining us today during this webinar, which is related to agenda item 9 of SBI. This is part of a series of kickoff webinars for 2022, which we are hosting in the lead up to the resumed session of the Working Group on Post-2020, SBI and SBSTA. However, before we begin, I have some sad news to announce. It is with deep sadness that the Secretariat is sharing the news of the passing of our colleague and friend and editor, Orestes Plasencia. Orestes passed away last week, and he will be sorely missed by us in the Secretariat and beyond all of us, I'm sure, all of you who have interacted with him. May we observe a moment of silence to honor his memory. Thank you. So as we mentioned in the notification 2021-085, on the resumed sessions of the 24th meeting of the Subsidiary Body on Scientific, Technical and Technological Advice, SBSTA 24, the third meeting of the Subsidiary Body on Implementation, SBI-3, and the third meeting of the Open-Ended Working Group on Post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework, Working Group 2023, the resumed meetings are now scheduled to take place on between 13th and 29th of March 2022 in Geneva. In addition, as mentioned in last week's notification 2022-001, in collaboration with the SBSTA Chair, the SBI Chair, and the Working Group 2020 co-chairs, as well as partner organizations, the Secretariat has been asked to host webinars to update parties and stakeholders on new documents related to the Geneva meetings, as well as the organization of work and other meeting-related aspects as needed. More information can be found under the web link shown on your screen, which ends with pre-Geneva-2022 webinars, and which is also referenced in the notification, and you can see it on the slide, and this PowerPoint will be shared, so you will have access to that later. I would like to welcome you to this first webinar in this series, which will focus on the new documents under SBI Agenda Item 9 on options to enhance planning, reporting, and review mechanisms. Overall, as you can see on the slide shown, there will be a number of other webinars which will be held leading up to the meeting in Geneva. Some of the dates are still tentative. However, we will make updates on the website, so please come back and keep checking the website for further details. Now, without further ado, I would like to hand over to the SBI's Chair, Charlotta, to open this first webinar and provide further context for today's session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jyoti, and welcome, colleagues. Good morning, good evening, depending on time zones. My name is Charlotta Sörqvist from Ministry of Environment in Sweden, normally. Now, as said, I'm chair of a subsidiary body of implementation, and I'm very happy to open this webinar. First, I would like to wish everyone a happy new year. I know that this year has been a difficult start for many with rising COVID cases, and none of us are in Geneva as we expected just a few months ago. I know that some of you also are likely experiencing additional challenges resulting from this pandemic. While this is not a situation that we would like to be in, I'm glad to be here with you today, and I'm glad to have the opportunity of convening this webinar in preparation for the resumed third SBI meeting, which will take place in a few months. In this first webinar, we'll focus on introducing the new documents which has been prepared for Agenda Item 9 on planning, monitoring, review and reporting. These documents are available on the conference website. However, before introducing the specific documents, I would like to provide a brief background of the current status of this agenda item, the linkage between the documents and the CRP, and how this agenda item will be taken up by the resumed SBI session. As you will recall, Part 1 of the third meeting of subsidiary body on implementation was held online from 16 May to 13 June 2021. During the meeting, Agenda Item 9 was considered on 18 May. In considering the item, the SBI had before it a note by the Executive Secretary on options to enhance planning, reporting and review mechanisms with a view to strengthening the implementation of the Convention, including elements of a draft recommendation. After initial exchange of agenda item, I established a contact group co-chaired by Mr. Andrew Stott of the United Kingdom and Ms. Gillian Guthrie of Jamaica to further consider the elements of a draft recommendation on the mechanism for the reporting, assessment and review of implementation. After a very fruitful exchange in the contact group, a CRP was developed which will go forward to the resumed session. This document, CBD/SBI/3/CRP5, entitled Options to Enhance Planning, Reporting and Review Mechanism with a view to strengthening the implementation of the Convention, included 4 footnotes, which mention work that would be conducted between Part 1 of the third meeting of SBI and the resumed session. The 4 footnotes include the following: Annex A, Guidance on MBSAPs, Annex B, Non-State Actor Commitment Guidance, Annex C, National Reporting Guidance and Template, and Annex D, Country-by-Country Review Modalities. The CRP states that all 4 annexes will be developed by the Secretariat in light of further discussions, including negotiations in the third meeting of the Working Group on the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework, and finalized by the Conference of the Parties at its 15th meeting. Drafts for each of these 4 annex documents have thus been developed and are available as addenda to document SBI/3/11 on the conference website. As the documents were not considered by the parties at Part 1 of the third meeting of SBI, and our time for deliberations at the upcoming SBI session will be quite limited, I'm hereby inviting parties to provide advance comments to the Secretariat on each of these 4 annexes to the CRP. Other stakeholders are also welcome to provide comments, which will be posted separately from the comments from parties. So tomorrow, the Secretariat will launch a web page for collecting these comments using a defined template. Comments will be welcomed from tomorrow until 25th February. All comments received will be posted on that web page, which is referenced in notification 2022-001. Additionally, I have asked the Secretariat to work with me and the co-chairs of a contact group for Agenda Item 9 to produce a non-paper, including a revised version of these 4 annexes, based on the comments from parties for the resumed session of SBI. During SBI, I plan to re-establish the contact group on Agenda Item 9 to continue the deliberation of this item. Please note that I'm not inviting comments on the body of a CRP, as this will be deliberated during the SBI session. I understand, of course, that some of the comments on the annexes may have implications for the CRP. However, any inconsistencies between the CRP and its annexes will need to be considered by the contact group at the resumed session in Geneva. It is also important to remind colleagues that any formal consideration of these annexes will need to occur during the SBI and then during the COP. This advance comment period cannot replace the negotiation that will occur during the meeting. However, I believe that presenting the comments could facilitate an open exchange of views to be collected, made available on the CBD website, and then allow me and the co-chairs of the contact group on Agenda Item 9 to present my views through a non-paper to facilitate the work of future contact group and allow us to progress this discussion in Geneva. So I appreciate very much all of you participating in this session today, and I thank you also in advance for providing comments on these 4 annexes. And I will now hand over to the Secretariat to do an introduction to the documents and to answer if there are any questions, procedure or other questions on the documents. So I hand over, I think, to Gillian. You have the floor.
Thank you. So since we are introducing ourselves today, my name is Jillian Campbell. I'm the head of the Monitoring, Review, and Reporting Unit at the CBD Secretariat. And the documents, of course, that we are discussing today are related to this monitoring, review, and reporting topic, as was just pointed out. There will be 4 presentations, one on each of the documents, and the different colleagues from the Secretariat that have expertise are going to present these 4 documents. So we will first be looking at the guidelines on national reporting. Before I hand over to Lige to give this presentation, I wanted to quickly mention that if you have questions, please put them into the chat. We will not be taking questions at this time. We will take all questions at the end, but you can type any questions that you have at any point during the remainder of the session. Thank you, and Lige, you have the floor.
Thank you. Good day and Happy New Year to everyone. I'm Lige Kai. I'm Program Management Officer, mainly responsible for national reporting, and also involved in the various aspects of the work of planning, monitoring, review, and reporting in the Secretariat of the Convention. I will quickly introduce the document on the national reporting under the Convention and draft guidance and template for the 7th and 8th national report, which is contained in the CBD/SBI/3/11/add1 and /amend1. Sorry for this long one. And the annex in this document will be included as one of the annexes to the CRP5, which is Annex C. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. First of all, I would like to share the basis we had for revising the draft guidance and template. And we mainly draw upon the views and the suggestions received from virtual session of SBSTA 24, SBI-3, and WG2020-3. We also consider the views from earlier meetings like SBSTA 23 and WG1 and 2 and related regional and thematic consultations, as well as the submissions from parties and organizations on the development of the post-2020 global biodiversity framework. And of course, we also build on the experience and lessons learned from the 6 national reports. For the views and suggestions received from SBI-3 and SBSTA 24 and WG3, we heard many views, but there are some common views and suggestions. First of all, with regard to the process, many parties are of the view that the national report should be the main the instruments of the monitoring, reporting, and reviewing, and the majority of the parties prefer to submit 2 regular national reports in this decade. And there are a few countries suggested that, you know, the parties could voluntarily submit some short update reports as a complement to the regular reports. For the content of the 2 regular reports, many countries think that it's important for the future national reports to focus on the information needed for assessing progress towards the goals and targets in the post-2020 global biodiversity framework, and also important to get information on the gaps and challenges in the implementation, and to use the common set of headline indicators for measurement. For the purpose and use of national reports, many countries say that the national reports is not just for reporting, but should be used for various purposes, like country by country review, global stock taking, communication, and even the developing mechanism to enhance implementation. And meantime, some countries also stress that the national report need to be closely linked with the monitoring framework of the framework and the national planning process. And a number of countries also highlight the importance of increasing synergies in the reporting to the related conventions and SDGs. Next slide, please. With regard to the lessons we learned from 6 national reports, you can find a summary in the earlier document prepared for the virtual session SBI-3, which is the SBI-3, 11, and add1. The main challenge we have noted in using the template for the 6 national report include that there are some overlaps among the sections, particularly the main sections in the report, and then the clearer guidance needed for assessing the national contribution to the global targets, and also the assessing the effectiveness of the policy implementation measures, and of course also on the use of indicators as well. So these are the lessons we have learned. So as I said, that we mainly give consideration to the views and suggestions received from SBI-3, SBSTA, and OEWG, and also lessons learned from SIGNAT. With that, when we revising the draft guidance and template for the 7th and 8th national report, we understand, next slide please. These are the main considerations we give to revising the template for the 7th and 8th national report. We understand that the future reports needs to solicit information essential for global review or stock taking of the progress towards the goals and targets of the post-2020 global biodiversity framework. Specifically, the countries will be asked to report on the implementation of the national targets and MBSAPs, which will be developed or revised in light of the post-2020 framework. The countries, when they're doing this, countries need to focus on the actions taken, outcome achieved, effectiveness of the actions, and challenges encountered. And based on this, the countries will assess the level of the national progress towards achieving the global targets using the headline and other indicators. In addition, the countries will also report on the implementation of associated strategies and plans adopted as part of the global biodiversity framework. In terms of the process, the countries will be encouraged to involve all the relevant stakeholders, IPLCs, and the focal points of the protocols and related conventions, as well as to increase the synergies in the reporting to the related conventions and SDGs. In the meantime, we will also try to make the format simpler and easier for use, and also add the suggested word counts, which we hope will keep the report short and focused. Next slide, please. So here's the proposed structure for the 7th and 8th national report, which includes 5 sections. In the earlier version, there are also 5 sections, but there are some changes to the structure. And you can see that the executive summary, which is originally section 5, and now moved to the front, because this could help communicate the main findings and results from the report. Among all these sections, section 4 and 5 and the main one, and the parties will be expected to provide main information essential for global stock taking. And in the annex, the countries will report on the implementation of the associated strategies and plans. Next slide, please. Just to show you an example of this section 5, which is the most important part of the report. As I already said, that this part, the parties are expected to provide information on the national target, the main actions taking, and then the outcomes achieved and the effectiveness of the actions and challenges encountered, and also provide the value of the headline indicators related to this target. And based on all this, the parties will be expected to do the assessments of the levels of national progress towards the global targets. So these are the information requested in the section 5, which is the most important part of the report. Next slide, please. This one, I just want to quickly show you the relevant elements to relating to the national reporting. But as Charlotte just said, that the parties are expected to provide the advanced comments on the annex C, not the body of the CRP. So I'm not going to go into the details about this. Next slide, please. So, from tomorrow, we'll put all this template in one of designated web page where the parties can see the documents and also see the template where you can use to submit your advanced comments on Annex C. And in the tempo particularly for this document, the parties and observers are requested to submit first the general comments on the draft guidance and template, and then secondly, provide specific suggestions on individual sections in the template for the 7th and 8th national report. Next slide, please. As Charlotte just said, that the whole purpose of this getting advanced comments now, and the purpose is to facilitate adoption of CRP5 in Geneva, and thereafter a COP15 decision at COP15 Part 2, including the guidance and template for the 7th and 8th national report. So that's all from me, and thank you so much for your attention. We're happy to answer your questions, and we're also looking forward to receiving your comments on the Annex C. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Li-Jie. So the next presentation that we will have will be on the guidance document for NBSAPs. And I would like to hand over to Nadine to introduce herself in this document. Thank you.
Hello, good time of the day and best wishes for 2022. My name is Nadine Saad. I'm a Program Management Officer with the Secretariat of the Convention. I work with the monitoring unit mostly on NBSAPs. I also work with the Japan Biodiversity Fund on NBSAPs also, and a number of other issues. So I'm going to speak to you about the document AD4, which is the draft guidance on updating or revising national biodiversity strategies and action plans in light of the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework. The annex to this document is Annex A, is referred to as Annex A, which is intended to be attached to CRP5 once it's adopted. Next slide, please. So this document is referred to in the footnote of the draft recommendation from SBI Part 1 and in the list of intercessional work annexed to the report of the Part 1 of SBI-3. It has been prepared in light of the discussions at the SBI-3 Part 1, and it provides guidance on updating national biodiversity strategies and action plans and a template for submission of national targets. This template replaces the template provided in the previous document that you see referred at the bottom of the slide, which was presented at SBI Part 1, SBI-3 Part 1. Next slide, please. So a quick overview of the document. It has 4 main sections: an introduction, a piece on the minimum common elements of the post-2020 NBSAPs, the process and timeline for aligning NBSAPs with the Global Biodiversity Framework, and then at the end an annex, which consists of the template for submission of national targets towards the Global Biodiversity Framework. Next slide, please. So I will walk you through these main sections. So in the introduction, we have some general ideas about NBSAPs. It talks about them being the main vehicle for national implementation of the Convention and of the Global Biodiversity Framework. There's a mention of Article 6 of the Convention, which is the article which requests parties to develop such strategies and to integrate them into other strategies in their countries. Importantly, the NBSAPs will be and are a key component of planning, monitoring, reporting, and review, and of the enhanced mechanism that we are trying to designed for the convention and for the post-2020 global biodiversity framework. MBSAP should really be, in addition to a document, should be seen as an umbrella process for all national biodiversity objectives and actions in the country, including those relating to biosafety and access and benefit sharing. Please, next slide. So continuing with the general ideas, it is recommendable that MBSAP's processes involve all government sectors, all stakeholders, and all rights holders, that they garner high-level political support, interministerial coordination, and vertical integration, that meaning with the subnational levels of government. It's recommendable that they are adopted as policy and legal instruments, and that they are integrated into other strategies in the government and beyond. MBSAPs should be living documents that can be revised and adapted as needed without interrupting implementation, and that national implementation should continue even now while the GBF is being negotiated and adopted and while MBSAPs are being aligned. Next slide, please. So the next section of the document talks about the minimum common elements of post-2020 MBSAPs. There are three such elements. The first are the national targets, which should be aligned with the post-2020 framework. So there should be a national target or a set of national targets for each one of the global targets. Their alignment should be explicit, and they should be adaptable in light of global stocktakes on ambition and implementation. The second common minimum element is there should be concrete action plans that are detailed spatially, temporally, and financially. So when and where will actions be taken, with what financing, and which actors are responsible for implementation. Have they been identified and agreed? So the ones that have been identified and agreed, let's say. The third minimum common element is something on monitoring and review. So how will the MBSAP be monitored and reviewed using national and headline indicators? Next slide, please. So you will notice that in the document there is not a list of contents of expected in MBSAPs, and that is because we have extensive existing guidance on what should be in an MBSAP. The main one, and this guidance is still valid. The main one is in Decision 9.8, and the Secretariat has been compiling other COP decisions, specifically in the thematic and cross-cutting areas that say something about other things that should be included in the MBSAP. Next slide, please. So in terms of the process and timeline for aligning MBSAPs with the GBF, parties should be reviewing their current MBSAPs and national targets in order to determine the extent of revisions necessary for alignment. And the idea here is that in many cases, a full-scale reworking of the MBSAP may not be necessary. So, but in order to know this, it's recommendable to do such a review. So to know how the existing goals, targets, and indicators match up with the global biodiversity framework or the draft one, which is what we have at the moment. What have been the implementation gaps from the past MBSAPs? What monitoring systems do we have in place? What existing data, knowledge, and knowledge systems do we have that we can count on? What sectoral and cross-sectoral policies exist and interface with the biodiversity concerns? What are the means of implementation and the financing and resources that we have? And what are the stakeholders and rights holders? Who are the stakeholders and rights holders that have been involved to date, and maybe what others could be involved? Next slide, please. So continuing on the process, the document states that national targets should be submitted within 1 year of adoption of the framework. using the template provided in the annex, which I will talk to you about in a moment. Existing targets that have been set in other processes or even under the previous strategic plan that are deemed still relevant can also be submitted and their alignment explained. National targets can be submitted ahead of the revised or updated MBSAP. Concrete actions to achieve the targets may be submitted simultaneously or as a second step. And national targets may include commitments from actors beyond national governments as appropriate, and that's I will explain in the template also. Finally, on process, next slide, please. Finally, on process and timeline for aligning MBSAPs, it is recommendable that the process for the MBSAP be a whole of society approach, that there be a national coordination mechanism, including all actors or relevant actors or representatives of them to oversee the policy cycle. There should be, as much as possible, mainstreaming with national sustainable development plans, national development plans, poverty reduction strategies, and others. And there should be, in order to have maximum coherence and efficiency, synergies with biodiversity-related conventions, real conventions, etc., and of course SDGs. Next slide, please. So here we go to the template. It's a very simple template. There's only about 6 questions at the moment. So for each of the global targets, so you see global target 1 there, but it would repeat for each of the targets, parties would be requested to state the national target, how this national target contributes to the global target, what other global targets this national target contributes to, and the name of the national government authority responsible for coordinating the implementation and reporting on this target. Next slide, please. Then there is a question on whether the target is related to a national target already made by your national government in the context of the strategic plan 2011-2020 or other relevant processes. And then finally, is this national target also part of a commitment submitted separately by subnational governments or other actors beyond national governments? And this would be specifically only for joint activities that are to be joint activities or commitments or targets that are to be submitted along with or alongside these other actors. Next slide, please. Oh, that is it. I welcome your questions or comments. And as has been said previously, there will be a template for you to send us more comments on these documents. Thank you.
Thank you, Nadine. I think this presentation is particularly important given the fact that currently the GEP has announced that they will be giving funding for enabling activities in the period between now and even before the COP, and that support would be also used to review NBSAPs in order to better prepare for the revision or modification. So with that, I'm going to be presenting today on the next document, which is the modus operandi for a country-by-country review under the SBI. If you go to the next, well, this document is also referenced, of course, in the CRP, and similar to the others, it's in an addendum and it's mentioned as an annex to the CRP as Annex D. Okay, next slide. So this is a little bit different than some of the documents because there was already a trial phase of the SBI open-ended forum. This was conducted in September of 2020, and this also included a survey which was conducted after that trial phase. And so all the information on how that was conducted and the results of the survey are online and were utilized in developing this addendum. It's referred to in CRP 5, paragraph 12 primarily, and then again referenced in paragraph 16. It's also listed in the intersessional work table from SBI-3 Part 1, similar to the other addendum that had been mentioned previously. Next slide. So the main objectives of this open-ended forum of the SBI for country-by-country review of implementation include to contribute to the review of implementation, to support peer-to-peer learning and knowledge and experience sharing, to support the identification of strategic actions or solutions which can be used to overcome challenges in national implementation, to support planning related to information and knowledge, expertise, capacity, resources, technology, or other means of implementation, and to increase transparency. So this is really just to support sort of implementation across the board of the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework. Next slide. There's 3 phases which are proposed for the modus operandi of the country-by-country review. The first would consist of a series of online dialogues. The idea here is that every party would have an opportunity to be reviewed and participate in this online dialogue as a showcase country once during the next 8 years, so by 2030, and all parties would be welcome to attend these dialogues. This would then feed into the formal SBI meetings, and there would be an agenda item under SBI where the results of this and where implementation is reviewed in an open-ended SBI forum on review of implementation. And then as a third phase, there would be an expo at the COP meetings, and this would be really an opportunity for countries who have participated in the review to showcase their experiences, to share best practices, and an opportunity for advocacy and awareness building. And there could be potentially different prizes that would be involved in that third phase. And so this is the proposal for the overall modus operandi of the SBI country-by-country review of implementation for the open-ended forum of the SBI country-by-country review of implementation. Next slide. So similar to the other documents, I think you are aware that we are requesting that comments be provided via the template, which is available on this website, and comments and observers are invited to submit any comments that they might have on the proposed modus operandi included in this Annex D. Further information is on the website. Next slide. So that's it for this very short presentation. And now I will hand over to Catalina for the last presentation and an introduction from her. The last presentation will be on commitments from actors other than national governments. Over to you, Catalina.
Thank you, Jillian, and good day to everyone on this webinar. Like others, I'm wishing you all best wishes for 2022. So by introduction, I am Catalina Santa Maria. I'm a Senior Program Management Officer and Special Advisor to the Executive Secretary. I'm managing partnerships and also engagement activities for the Office of the Executive Secretary. Today, I'm delighted to present a new document. It actually was posted just yesterday. And this document is referring to commitments from actors other than national governments in the context of an enhanced planning, monitoring, review, and reporting mechanism. You will see it as CBD/SBI/3/11/Add6. This refers to the Annex B that is referenced in CRP 5. Next slide, please. So in terms of background, the Add6 has been prepared in response to discussions at SBI-3 Part 1. It also provides context and guidance for commitments from actors other than national governments. And as you can see in the document, it describes who those actors are. In particular, we are referencing Indigenous people and local communities, subnational governments, cities, and other local authorities, intergovernmental organizations, other multilateral environmental agreements, non-governmental organizations, women's groups, youth groups, research organizations, the business and finance community, and representatives of sectors related to or dependent on biodiversity. So this is a very broad group. Now, as part of Add 6, it also presents a template for submissions of these type of commitments, and you will see this referenced in the annex of that paper. In view of its connection to CRP 5, the annex that is in Add 6 is referred to as Annex B in the CRP. In addition, references are included in paragraph 5, in paragraph 14, paragraph 16, and in footnote 3. And it is also reflected in the list of intersessional work from SBI-3 Part 1. This is document SBI-3/20. Next slide, please. So the draft guidance and annex on reporting elements reinforces the engagement of actors other than national governments through the development of biodiversity commitments. It also presents items to consider for the commitment template as per the paragraphs 5 and 14 of CRP 15. And it presents a reporting template that invites commitments from actors other than national governments towards the 2030 goals. As you may recall, Annex B is to be prepared in light of the discussions by the third working group on the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework before COP15. And therefore, to assist the SBI in the further consideration of this matter, the Executive Secretary has prepared this note. An information note will also be posted on non-state actors in due time. And that document, which is called an information document, is symboled SBI/3/INF/20. Next slide, please. So to touch upon the rationale and the links to the INF document 20, it is important to recall the recognition to a whole of society approach, where engaging actors other than national governments have been identified to catalyze upward cycles of ambition, lifting the urgency of action, to facilitate mobilization of coalitions among stakeholders and different sources of finance, to leverage partnerships and collaboration for nature and people, to look at new designs, methodologies, and tools, and offer new type of knowledge, building on other existing work that has been happening in the Secretariat and in the subject of biodiversity, and to show how biodiversity is in everyone's interest. In this way, influencing sectors that are impacting biodiversity loss to also make commitments. Now, the rationale also focuses on managing risks in order to lower cases of greenwashing and or of a negative influence to the intergovernmental process. And at the same time, looking at ways to enhance accountability and transparency by inviting commitments by actors other than national governments, and looking at not only understanding, but demonstrating how their ambition and actions contribute to the outcomes sought in the post-2020 framework. Next slide, please. In terms of principles to include commitments from actors other than national governments, and how this links particularly to the agenda item 9 and to the enhanced planning, monitoring, and review and reporting framework, a specific paragraph of Add 6, this is paragraph 9, points on specific conditions and principles to take into account. On one hand, the guidance builds off of experience that has been examined under the Sharm el-Sheikh to Kunming Action Agenda for Nature and People in its ability and its experience to collate standardized commitments, and also working with other data gatherers and providers using similar criteria. In addition, the conditions also reference the use of standardized guidelines and templates for reporting and verifying commitments. This could be used to improve global level analyses and aggregations into coalition stocktakes and gap reports. And this could also facilitate access to information that can be used as a basis for national and regional analyses. In addition, we have been working with different partners and assessing different metrics that have been used to measure ambition and impact for different non-state actors. And we have seen a growth in contributions that are coming from different platforms, specifically different commitment platforms, and by sectors and specific activity coalition groups. And therefore, methodologies are being developed with a specific focus on how to connect different actors and show their commitments to biodiversity. Principles also look at ways to encourage a process that informs and supports alignment with the cycles of national commitments, and prior to the proposed global gap report to facilitate more in-depth analyses. In addition, some of the principles focus on ways to refine and enhance the software interoperability that exists among different commitment processes in order to expand visibility, to improve efficiencies, and to avoid double counting. And lastly, in an effort to enhance collaboration with related multilateral environmental agreements and intergovernmental sustainable development processes, the principles also look at ways to enhance cross-thematic and cross-sectoral stocktakes and dialogues. Next slide, please. You will notice in Add 6 that there are elements in the annex that reference the minimum set of points to analyze commitments from actors other than national governments. And this is to be undertaken in a standardized way in the context of the post-2020 framework, including for the global aggregation into the CBD's review mechanism. Currently, you will see in the annex that the format is simple. Its purpose is to be very easy to use and to keep information focused and relevant to the review mechanism. As you will notice, the structure of the information referenced in the annex comprises three parts. The first, a general information section that talks about the non-state actor entity, in other words, the contributor to the commitment. The second part that talks about the commitment itself, looking for more details and descriptions about the commitment in relationship with the post-2020 framework. And the third section that focuses primarily on progress tracking in order to provide more details on the commitment's time frame, on the indicators that are being used, and how the commitment is to be monitored and reported. Next slide, please. So lastly, the template that other colleagues have mentioned is also available on this slide. It is the template that will collate and review the feedback that is received for this Add 6 document. The template invites comments from parties and observers, in particular to look at the proposed principles for capturing commitments from actors other than national governments, and also to provide specific suggestions on the core elements that are contained in the annex of Add 6. Further information will provide additional viewpoints on the role of non-state actors and the opportunities that this exercise and this connection with the review mechanism entails is available in the information document, which is the CBD/substa/inf/20, as well as in the website that refers to the Sharm el-Sheikh to Kunming Action Agenda for Nature and People, which is listed on the slide. With that, I thank you all. We can turn to the last slide. I thank you and welcome any comments or questions for clarification. Thank you very much, and over to you, Jillian.
Thank you. So I want to thank everyone for attending the session this evening. I wanted to take a second just to mention that the recording of this session, the recording of the morning session, and the PowerPoint presentations will all be online. And so you can access them on the meeting website, which was mentioned at the start of the session, and it's also referenced in the notification. And that will be the case for all the webinars in this series, so that you can always go back and look, or if you missed a portion of the session, you can listen to it later. I don't actually see any questions this evening in the chat, and so I think that with that, I will hand back over to Charlotta to close the session. Thank you.
Thank you, Gillian, and thank you and all others at the Secretariat for the presentation of the documents. Very useful indeed. I think it's very good to have this introduction as a background now, and you have a possibility to give advanced comments. So I would like to remind you all that I now invite advanced comments on the documents. And as said before, tomorrow or today, depending on where you are in time zone, the Secretary will launch a web page for collecting these comments. Comments we will welcome until 25th of February. So take the chance, and I thank you in advance for all comments. Again, I thank you all for joining us for this first webinar, and I look forward to seeing all of you in the future webinars in this series. So thank you very much, and have a good day or good evening, depending where you are. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.